Welcome to this week's For the Love of Retro. We have for you in our new retro games reviews Sorcerers for the CPC line of computers and Phantom Leap for the Amiga 500 and the bigger Amigas. In our DOS Vault, we remember the classic apogee action platformer Alien Carnage, and we review Disksweeper, a new approach to the classic Windows game Minesweeper. In our hardware section, we're looking into the last of our so-called clone cartridges, Game Gear Flashmaster ED Pro, and we find out if it can hold a candle to the original cartridge. Finally, in our history lesson, we look into the history of Acorn Electron, the little charming machine that fought a giant and failed to defeat him. So, stick with us for another exciting episode full of retro history and gaming, here in our channel For the Love of Retro. Let us begin. Hello and welcome to this week's new retro games reviews. And we begin with Sorcerers, a game by Salva Cantero and Play on Retro. It's a game for Amstrad CPC computers, and as you can see, it has very colorful and well-animated graphics. They're very cute, although a bit squashed, I would say. Nevertheless, they're cute and detailed. It's pretty good, granted that this is an Amstrad CPC, and very colorful. Now, the premise of the game is that you have a sorcerer trying to collect a specific combination of ingredients. That combination is shown at the upper right corner, right where it says key. Now, you collect coins, and depending on the amount you have collected, an ingredient will appear at the store, up there in the upper right corner almost of the screen. Now, if you collect more coins than the amount needed for a specific ingredient, a different ingredient unlocks that equals the price. Now, the only way to lower the amount of coins that you've collected in order to reach the specific amount that you need is to toss them into the well you can see up there. There are bonuses such as the speed up I just picked up here, extra lives, and many other bonuses. The controls are very tight, very good, and collision detection is fair. Of course, you have to avoid the guards. I do need to mention that the game shines particularly when you play in a two-player mode. If you have a buddy of yours, you can try the competitive mode. In this mode, you run to accomplish the combination needed to open the gate first, whilst collecting coins and ingredients. The first one to collect the correct ingredients gets to unlock the door and win the round. The game becomes pretty frantic when you play in two-player mode, and I must admit it becomes much more fun. It's a wonderful game. The Amstrad platform needs more games like this. It's colorful, it's fun. It's pretty addictive, especially if you're playing with a buddy of yours. The music, the sound, and the graphics are of high quality. It's a simple but addictive concept. I think that this is one of the best games on the platform from the homebrew scene, and I definitely recommend you play it. And with that said, we're moving on to our next game of the week, Phantom Leap for the Amiga, the Commodore Amiga computer. Now, Phantom Leap is a game by the well-known in the homebrew scene Who Games 2017. It's a game that combines many elements of other games. Your goal is to collect a specific amount of coins in each stage. Each time you collect a coin, the bar at the bottom of the screen fills up a bit. You also get to collect some extra bonuses here for points. You get to destroy your enemies if you jump on their heads, Mario style. But it takes more than one jump to accomplish it. The graphics of the game are, as usual, as any production from Who Games, they are excellent games, excellent graphics. When you smash these cardboards, you get teleported into another screen, and then you use the same teleporter to go to another until you return to the original screen. Now, the gate opens up, like I said, the exit gate, only when you collect a specific amount of coins. In some rounds, you need to collect them all. In others, you collect all the coins only if you want a better bonus. The graphics are excellent and wonderfully animated, just like they were on Dr. Danger's, a game we saw in a previous episode. The controls are really tight, the collision detection is excellent. The music, the sound effects, it needs an Amiga 500 with a 512 kilobyte extension and a Kickstart 1.3, which is pretty much the standard for Who Games usually. The game is not yet complete fully. There are 8 levels currently, but it will be soon. It's a wonderful game, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's really fun. I believe it will be completed pretty soon. Even at its current state, the 8 levels with so many stages provide a lot of fun. I haven't met any game-breaking bugs, and I'm only mentioning it because it's not the final version of the game, but nothing to have stopped me from enjoying the game. I do believe it's a wonderful game. You should keep an eye on it for its final version as well, but you should give it a go even in its current state, because it's extremely entertaining. Another quality title from Who Games. And with that said, let's move on to our next section. Hello and welcome to this week's hardware review. Now this week we have the Flashmaster ED Pro for the Game Gear. It's another clone cartridge. It's it's well built compared to the Game Boy cartridge we saw a few episodes back. There is an SD card slot here, but not pretty much anything else. No reset buttons, Game Genie buttons and stuff like that. It is mentioning here that it's region free, and it is true. Of course, there's not much to its use. You just plug it in here, you switch it on. Once again, we'll have to apologize for the weird screen, because it's kind of hard in these old consoles to record gameplay on the actual hardware, not an emulator. I'm trying to do this in the actual hardware. So, switching it on. Now, once again, you have to excuse the quality and the fact that my Game Gear is not recapped. I always say I'll do it and I always forget it. Now, as you can see, we're met with the same process as the Game Boy clone cartridge, the erase and flashing that takes quite a while. I've even edited some time out of this video. It's a really long process. After you accomplish this, the game loads up with no problems, and it plays with no problems. But whether this is good enough or not, well, it's not good enough for me, but it's your personal preference. Now, there's really pretty much not a lot to say. The cartridge does what it promises to do. It helps you load your ROM backups of your cartridges and play them in a safe way for the cartridges, and, well, not in a faster way though. Just as it had this problem in many of these clone cartridges, the whole process behind it, the way they work, is that they erase the memory of the EPROM on the board, and it flashes it with your ROM, your chosen game. This process takes a while to happen, and in the Game Gear's Flashmaster ED Pro case, it takes a little bit more than it did with the NES, equally long with the Game Boy cartridge. I believe the verdict is the same, with the only exception so far being the NES cartridge. I believe that if you have the ability, if you have the financial ability to buy an original cartridge, go for it. If you're on a tight budget, it's a good alternative, but know this, it will just play your games and nothing else, and you will have to be pretty patient every time you want to play a different game. If I had to rank it, let's say, I would give it a 6 out of 10. And let's move on to our next section. Hello and welcome to this week's Dust Vault. We're beginning with the Disksweeper, an MS-DOS game by Voxel. It's a reimagining of the classic Minesweeper game. Yes, the famous Minesweeper that accompanied the early versions of Windows, but presented partially as a visual novel style. It has a story to give you an excuse to get on minesweeping. Now, customers come with their disks damaged and you get to repair them in your lab. This here is the captain, it's your boss actually. And there's our first customer, a little witch, with a ruined hard disk or diskette that you need to fix. The game is pretty short, and of course there's not much to explain about the gameplay if you've ever played Minesweeper, which I bet you have at least once in your life, even if just by curiosity. You have to flag the suspicious blocks that you believe that hide mines. You get to reveal any block you want. If it's not a bomb, it's a number that tells you that in how many adjacent squares a bomb may be hiding. Now, when you flag all the correct blocks, that do hide a bomb, you're good to go. The disk is repaired and the customer is living happy. Now, it is a very simple game. The graphics are cute. The visual novel style is pretty well made in, the classic old-time anime style of those games that we used to play back in the day. Of course, the minesweeping part of the game is nothing to write home about. It's presented like this in a diskette style, which is kind of original, but it's really nothing special. If you like Minesweeper, because as far as I know, people either love or hate the specific game. So if you are one of the fans of this game, then you are going to enjoy it. It's a short game. There's only 3 customers, but depending on your skill, solving it might last you a while. If you don't like Minesweeper, Disksweeper is not gonna change your mind about it. It doesn't renovate the concept, but it's a solid, good effort, a fun little game if you like that style of games. And with that, we should be moving on to our next game of the DOS Vault, a classic game published by Apogee Software and developed by Interactive Binary Illusions and Sub-Zero Software. For those of you who love the classic VGA platformers, this is a famous game, the Alien Carnage. It was initially published under the name Halloween Harry. It's a side-scrolling platform game, and I believe it's the evolution of the style that Apogee has started developing and publishing early on. Now we have 4 missions with various stages to play, 4 episodes. It was released initially as shareware with only the first episode, and now it's released as freeware. Now, as you can see, we have to liberate damsels in distress, or some gentlemen, some businessmen. These machines provide us with upgrades or a different kind of weapon. Of course, you need to have the appropriate amount of coins that you collect by destroying the alien invaders that come in various forms. Your first weapon is the flamethrower. It's quite efficient. Each weapon has a specific amount of ammunition. There you go, that was a coin. And the ammunition depletes depending on the type of weapon, fast or slow. Now, this is a sewage system that you have to navigate. There are some switches, like this one, that you have to turn on in order to open doors or pathways. Now let's change. Yeah, a switch like that. Let's go up. Now, the game has a balanced difficulty level, especially if you play on the easy or medium difficulty. There are many checkpoints, so in case you lose, you get to continue from that point. You get to see how many captives are left that you need to liberate. I'm trying to get this. Yes, These are the micro nukes. Not a lot of ammo, but extremely deadly. There you go. Once a weapon is depleted, you switch on to the previous one you had until all ammunition is depleted and you're left with the flamethrower. Now, the graphics and animation are the classic VGA graphics from that era. They're very well animated, very colorful, very in style. The music and the sound effects are wonderful. This game was released back in the day exclusively for the MS-DOS. It's a wonderful game. It's a classic Apogee style game. I do recommend that you play it if you haven't back in the day. But even if you did, it's a good game to go back to. There are many games nowadays in consoles like DS and Switch that resemble that kind of games, and this is the pure form. It's a game that I definitely recommend that you try and enjoy. And let's move on. Welcome to our history lesson. The wonderful Acorn Electron. A computer that was supposed to be the spectrum killer. A machine to take the crown away from the king of the fledgling and newborn software games industry of the UK and the entire Europe to that extent. Now, the Acorn Electron was initially designed as a more practical and cheaper version of the BBC Model B. It was supposed to be a machine that would fit that special place in between the BBC and the ZX Spectrum, a games machine, if you may, but at the same time having some of the abilities of his older brother. Now, the Acorn Electron was a very elegantly designed machine, very pretty, but its history was not meant to be a happy one. You see, initially the machine was supposed to come out during the Christmas of 1982. It was still a very hot period and everyone wanted to try and buy a new micro. Now, as you know, Acorn had stolen, quote unquote, the BBC contract from Sinclair. But at the same time, that contract, even though it led all the BBC Model B machines to become the basis for the whole computer educational system in the UK, the ZX Spectrum was still outselling it because of its popularity with the so-called bedroom coders. So, a Christmas release in '82 would have been a real coup d'etat for Acorn. Unfortunately, the massive, as it was called, ULA, the overly complicated technology behind it, caused serious production issues. In the end, the machine was launched at the August of 1983, long after the date that was initially announced. And even though it began to sell quite good, the problem here was that the market at the time was saturated. There were way too many micros out there, and people had settled already in specific machines such as the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64, and a few months later to the Amstrad CPC series of computers. Unfortunately, the problem was that there was no room for a machine such as the Acorn Electron. Even though it had a strong start with projected sales of over 100,000 units, the sales stopped almost immediately after that. The owners of Acorn found themselves with storages filled with stock. The machine started to be sold in various stores at discount, sometimes even at a quarter of its original price. Eventually, even Acorn itself stopped supporting the machine and ceased all production. The machine faded away, slowly and silently, which is a crying shame. It was capable of competing with the ZX Spectrum at some level, but the machine was seriously undercut on the technological level compared to its elder brother, came too late to the market, and unfortunately never had the same support from the so-called bedroom coders as UK's favorite child, the ZX Spectrum. Join us again next week for another interesting, mysterious, quirky, and maybe funny history lesson. Bye! We'll see you next week with a new and exciting episode.